I still remember that day like it was yesterday. I had been putting off going to the bank for weeks, but I knew I had to face my fears and ask for credit. My financial situation was dire, and I desperately needed a loan to get back on my feet. As I walked through the bank's doors, I could feel the weight of my own anxiety bearing down on me. The bank's interior was sleek and modern, with marble floors and gleaming glass partitions. But despite its polished appearance, I couldn't shake the feeling that I didn't belong there. I was a man struggling with obesity, and I knew that my appearance would likely be met with judgment. As I approached the counter, I could feel the eyes of the bank's employees on me. They seemed to be sizing me up, their gazes lingering on my stomach and thighs. I tried to ignore them to focus on the task at hand, but it was hard to shake the feeling of self-consciousness. The bank employee who finally deigned to speak to me was a pinched-faced woman with a cruel smile. She looked me up and down before asking, in a voice dripping with disdain, what I wanted. I tried to explain my situation, to tell her that I needed a loan to get back on my feet, but she barely let me get a word in edgewise. "I'm afraid we can't approve your credit application," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "Your health issues make you a high-risk borrower." I felt a stinging sensation in my eyes as I realized what she was saying. The bank was rejecting my credit application because of my obesity. I was being punished for my weight, and it was humiliating. The employee's words were like a slap in the face. I felt a wave of shame and embarrassment wash over me, and for a moment I couldn't speak. I just stood there, frozen in place, as the bank's employees looked on with a mixture of pity and contempt. Finally, I managed to stammer out a thank you and turn around, fleeing the bank as quickly as I could. As I walked out into the bright sunlight, I felt a sense of defeat wash over me. I had been humiliated, and I didn't know how I was going to recover. But little did I know my life was about to take a dramatic turn. A turn that would change everything. I'll never forget the day my phone rang, breaking the deafening silence that had consumed my life. I was still reeling from the bank's rejection, feeling like I was stuck at rock bottom. But as I picked up the phone, I was surprised to hear a familiar voice on the other end, my old friend Alex. We had lost touch after high school, but his warm and cheerful tone transported me back to a time when life seemed simpler. "Hey buddy, how's it going?" Alex asked, oblivious to the struggles I had been facing. I hesitated for a moment, unsure of how much to reveal, but something about his friendly demeanor put me at ease. I opened up to him about my recent experiences, and he listened intently, offering words of encouragement. As we chatted, Alex casually mentioned that he was now working as a manager at a small firm in the city. He told me that they were looking for someone with my skill set, and asked if I was interested in meeting up to discuss a potential job opportunity. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Someone actually believed in me. Someone thought I was worthy of a chance. I agreed to meet Alex the next day, and as I hung up the phone, a glimmer of hope sparked within me. Maybe, just maybe, this was the break I needed to turn my life around. I arrived at the office building, a nondescript high-rise in the financial district, and was greeted by Alex's warm smile. He introduced me to his team, and we sat down for an informal chat. As we discussed the job, I was surprised to find that it aligned perfectly with my strengths and interests. The company was small but growing, and Alex explained that I would have a real chance to make a difference. I left that meeting with a renewed sense of purpose and a spring in my step. A few days later, I started working at the new job, and slowly but surely my confidence began to rebuild. I was treated with respect and kindness by my new colleagues, and as I settled into my role, I began to realize that I was capable of so much more than I had ever given myself credit for. The workplace itself was a refreshing change from the soulless bank where I had been humiliated. Our office was a cozy, open-plan space filled with natural light, and the atmosphere was relaxed and collaborative. We would often grab lunch together or have impromptu brainstorming sessions by the coffee machine. It was a simple, human experience that I had been missing out on for so long. As I began to find my footing, I realized that this new opportunity was not just about a job, it was about rediscovering myself. The bank's rejection still lingered in my mind, but I was determined to prove to myself that I was so much more than that one experience. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of an incredible journey, one that would lead me to places I never could have imagined. I still remember the day I received the letter from the lawyer's office. I had inherited a large sum of money from a distant relative, someone I had never met. At first, I thought it was a joke. Me inheriting a fortune, It seemed like something out of a movie. But as I read through the documents, I realized it was real. I had inherited a life-changing amount of money. I couldn't believe my luck. Just a few years ago, I was struggling to make ends meet, and now I had more money than I knew what to do with. But as I thought about my newfound wealth, my mind kept wandering back to the bank that had humiliated me. The bank that had treated me like dirt because of my weight. I remembered the look on the bank manager's face when he told me I didn't qualify for a loan. The way he sneered at me, the way he made me feel like I was worthless. It was a pain that still lingered, a wound that still hadn't healed. But now I had the chance to get revenge. I started to formulate a plan, a way to use my newfound wealth to get back at the bank that had wronged me. I would show them that I was more than just my weight, that I was a force to be reckoned with. I would show them that I was worthy of respect, that I was worthy of dignity. I spent hours researching, planning, and scheming. I would make them regret the day they ever crossed me. I would make them beg for my business, beg for my forgiveness. And I would enjoy every minute of it. As I sat in my small apartment, surrounded by papers and documents, I felt a sense of purpose that I had never felt before. I was no longer just a victim, I was a force to be reckoned with. And I was just getting started. Little did the bank know, a storm was brewing and it was heading straight for them. I still remember the day I walked into that bank, my head held high, my confidence soaring. It was the same bank where I had been humiliated, laughed at, and belittled for my weight. But now the tables had turned. Now they needed me. As I entered the bank, I could feel the desperation in the air. The employees, once so smug and self-assured, now fawned over me like I was royalty. They offered me coffee, asked about my day, and inquired about my financial needs. It was sickeningly sweet, but I played along. I smiled and laughed, pretending to be interested in their offers. I asked questions about their services, and they tripped over each other to provide answers. I could see the hunger in their eyes, the desperation to make a sale. One of them, a young woman with a fake smile, approached me with a folder full of brochures. "Sir, we have an excellent portfolio of investment options that I think would be perfect for you," she said, her voice dripping with sweetness. "We offer competitive interest rates, flexible terms, and exceptional customer service." I raised an eyebrow, intrigued by her audacity. "Tell me more," I said, pretending to be interested. She launched into a lengthy explanation of their services, but I tuned her out. I was too busy enjoying the show. The bank's employees were dancing around me, trying to impress me with their offerings. It was a reversal of fortunes, and I was savoring every moment. But then I decided to take it up a notch. I leaned forward, my eyes locked on the young woman's, and said, "You know, I'm not sure if I'm interested in your services, but I might be willing to consider it if you apologize for the way I was treated last time I was here." The room fell silent. The employees exchanged nervous glances, and the young woman's smile faltered. "I apologize, sir," she stuttered. "We didn't mean to offend you, we were just trying to, I waved my hand, enjoying the discomfort. No, it's okay. I'm not looking for an apology from you. I want an apology from the person who humiliated me, the person who thought it was funny to mock my weight." The employees looked at each other, unsure of what to do next. But I knew exactly what I was doing. I was raising the stakes, and I was going to make them pay for their previous behavior. Little did they know, this was just the beginning. I still remember the day I walked back into that bank, the same one where I was humiliated and belittled for my weight. But this time, I wasn't there to ask for credit or plead for their approval. This time, I was the one with the upper hand. As I entered the bank, I could see the employees' eyes widen in recognition. They knew who I was, and they knew what they had done. The air was thick with tension, and I could almost smell the desperation emanating from them. The bank manager, the same one who had sneered at me and made snide comments about my weight, approached me. His eyes were cast downward, and his voice was laced with contrition. "Sir, we want to apologize for the way we treated you. We were wrong, and we're truly sorry." I looked at him, my expression unreadable. I could see the fear in his eyes, the fear that I would reject their apology and walk away. But I didn't. I nodded, accepting their apology, and a weight lifted off their shoulders. "We want to make it right, sir," the manager continued. "We want to offer you a special deal, one that will make up for our previous behavior." I smiled, a sweet, victorious smile. I knew exactly what I wanted, and I knew exactly what I was going to get. "I'll deposit a small portion of my fortune with your bank," I said, "but only on my terms. I want a special account, one that will give me complete control over my finances. And I want a personal account manager, someone who will cater to my every need." The manager nodded eagerly, relief written all over his face. "Of course, sir. We'll give you whatever you want. Just please don't take your business elsewhere." I chuckled, a low, satisfied chuckle. I had them right where I wanted them. I had the upper hand, and they were at my mercy. And for once I felt truly satisfied. My revenge was sweet, and it was finally satisfied. But as I walked out of the bank, I knew that this was only the beginning. I had proven to myself that I was capable of greatness, that I was worthy of respect and dignity. And I knew that I would continue to soar, to reach new heights and achieve even greater things. The world had better watch out, because I was just getting started. I still remember the day I closed the chapter on my past humiliation like it was yesterday. The feeling of finally letting go of all the pain and shame was like a weight lifted off my shoulders. It was time for me to start a new chapter, one that would be filled with purpose and fulfillment. I began by focusing on my future, setting new goals and aspirations for myself. I knew that I had the means to make a real difference in the world, and I was determined to do just that. I started using my fortune to help others, donating to charities and causes that I believed in. It was an incredible feeling, knowing that I was making a positive impact on people's lives. As I delved deeper into philanthropy, I discovered a sense of purpose that I had never known before. It was like I had finally found my calling, and I was determined to make the most of it. I spent my days researching different causes, meeting with people who were making a difference, and learning about the best ways to use my resources to help others. One of the first projects I got involved with was a local food bank. I had always been passionate about food, and I knew that many people in my community were struggling to make ends meet. I donated a significant amount of money to the food bank, and I also volunteered my time to help them distribute food to those in need. It was an eye-opening experience, and it made me realize just how much of a difference one person could make. As I continued to help others, I started to notice a change within myself. I felt more confident, more self-assured, and more determined than ever before. I knew that I had been given a second chance, and I was determined to make the most of it. I was no longer the same person who had been humiliated at the bank all those years ago. I was stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. And yet, despite all the progress I had made, I knew that I would always carry the scars of my past with me. I would always remember the pain and the shame, but I would also remember the lessons I had learned. I would always stand up for myself, and I would never let anyone bring me down again. I was ready for whatever the future held, and I was determined to make it a bright one. I still remember the day I decided to speak out against body shaming and obesity stigma. It was as if a weight had been lifted off my shoulders, and I finally felt free to be myself. I started sharing my story, talking about the humiliation I had faced at the bank and how it had affected me. I wrote articles, gave interviews, and even started a social media campaign, using my experience to raise awareness about the importance of body positivity and respect for all individuals, regardless of their size or shape. As I shared my message, I was met with an outpouring of support from people who had faced similar struggles. They thanked me for being brave enough to speak out, for giving them a voice, and for showing them that they were not alone. I realized that my experience was not unique, and that many people had faced similar humiliation and marginalization. I started to receive invitations to speak at events and conferences, and I used these opportunities to spread my message even further. I talked about the importance of creating a society that values diversity and inclusivity, where everyone feels welcome and respected. I shared my vision of a world where people of all sizes and shapes can live without fear of judgment or discrimination. As my message spread, I started to notice a shift in the way people talked about body image and obesity. The conversation was no longer just about weight loss and dieting, but about self-acceptance, self-love, and self-respect. People were starting to see that body positivity was not just about feeling good about oneself, but about creating a more just and equitable society. I was proud to be a part of this movement, and I felt grateful to have the opportunity to make a difference. I knew that I still had a long way to go, but I was determined to continue speaking out, to continue advocating for change, and to continue inspiring others to join me in this fight. Little did I know that my message was about to resonate with people in ways I never could have imagined, and that my voice was about to become a catalyst for a much larger movement. As I continued to share my story, I began to notice a shift in the responses I received. People were no longer just sympathizing with me. They were also sharing their own stories of struggle and triumph. It was as if my message had awakened a sense of community and solidarity that I had never experienced before. I started to connect with like-minded individuals who shared my passion for body positivity and self-acceptance. We would spend hours discussing our experiences, sharing our fears and insecurities, and supporting one another through the tough times. It was a truly liberating experience, and I felt like I had finally found a place where I belonged. One of the first people I met was a woman named Sarah. She had been through a similar experience to mine, and her story was both heartbreaking and inspiring. We bonded over our shared struggles, and she quickly became a close friend and confidant. Together, we started to brainstorm ways to spread our message of self-acceptance and body positivity. We created social media accounts, started a blog, and even organized local events to raise awareness about the importance of self-love and self-acceptance. It was amazing to see how quickly our community grew and how passionate people were about joining our cause. As our movement gained momentum, I started to receive messages from people all over the world. They would share their own stories, thank me for my bravery, and ask for advice on how to overcome their own struggles. It was a truly humbling experience, and I felt grateful to be in a position to help others. But what I didn't realize at the time was that our community was about to make a much bigger impact than I ever could have imagined. We were on the cusp of something amazing, something that would challenge societal norms and promote acceptance and inclusivity on a grand scale. And I was honored to be a part of it. I still remember the first time someone reached out to me and told me that my story had inspired them to make a change in their own life. It was a woman who had been struggling with her own weight and had been feeling hopeless, but hearing my story had given her the courage to start her own journey towards a healthier lifestyle. That moment was a turning point for me. It made me realize that my struggles, my pain, and my humiliation hadn't been for nothing. I had been given a platform to make a difference, and I was determined to use it. As my community continued to grow, I started to see the impact that my work was having. People were not only inspired by my story, but they were also making real changes in their own lives. They were starting to see that they didn't have to be defined by their weight or their appearance. They were starting to understand that they were worthy of love and acceptance, no matter what. I started to receive messages from people who had been bullied or marginalized because of their weight. They told me that my story had given them the strength to stand up for themselves, to demand respect and kindness from others. I also started to receive messages from people who had been struggling with mental health issues. They told me that my story had given them hope, that it had shown them that they were not alone and that there was a way out of the darkness. As I read through these messages, I was filled with a sense of pride and purpose. I knew that I had made a difference, that my story had left a mark on the world. And I knew that I would continue to fight for kindness, acceptance, and love, no matter what. My legacy would not be one of shame or humiliation. It would be one of hope and inspiration. I had been given a gift, a chance to make a difference, and I was determined to use it to leave the world a better place than I had found it. As I looked back on my journey, I knew that I had come a long way. I had faced my demons and had emerged stronger and wiser. And I knew that I would continue to spread my message of kindness and love, no matter what the future held. As I sit here, surrounded by the opulent furnishings of my spacious office, I am reminded of the incredible journey that has brought me to this moment. The soft glow of the afternoon sun casting through the floor-to-ceiling windows illuminates the rows of framed awards and accolades that line the walls, a testament to the perseverance and determination that have defined my life. I think back to that fateful day when I walked into the bank, my heart filled with hope and my spirit vulnerable, only to be met with scorn and humiliation. The sting of those words, the condescending tone, and the dismissive gaze still linger in my memory, but they no longer hold the power to wound me, for I have come full circle. The trials and tribulations that followed that painful experience forged a strength within me that I never knew I possessed. The fire that burned within me, fueled by the desire to prove my worth, not just to others but to myself, has tempered me into a person I am proud to be. As I reflect on the journey that has brought me to this place of self-acceptance and forgiveness, I am filled with a sense of pride and accomplishment. I have taken the wounds of my past and transformed them into the wisdom of the present. I have used my experiences to make a difference in the lives of others, to offer hope and support to those who have been marginalized and oppressed. And now, as I look out at the world around me, I am at peace. The bank that once rejected me now begs for my business, a testament to the power of redemption and the triumph of the human spirit. I have forgiven, not for their sake, but for mine, releasing the burden of resentment and anger that once weighed me down. I have come full circle, and in doing so, I have discovered a sense of freedom and peace that I never thought possible. As I sit in this moment, surrounded by the trappings of success, I am reminded that true wealth lies not in riches or fame, but in the love and acceptance we have for ourselves and the difference we make in the lives of others.